Adopted kids of gay couples. How has being the child of this kind of relationship been for you? I am the son of a lesbian mother who wanted a child badly enough that she was artificially inseminated as a single mother before the maternity leave stuff and was already having trouble making ends meet. I never would have known that we weren't very well off financially from the way my mother and I were. My mother dated 2 women I think in the time since I was born and has been with the same partner for about 20 years now. I know. Horrible son. Don't know my own mother's anniversary. From as early as I can remember to about age 10, we lived alone together, watching Star Trek, TNG and playing Zelda and Final Fantasy together every night. Felt like a pretty standard childhood. Although I've since learned that not all parents play video games with their kids. She has always been incredibly open with me about anything and never tried to force any sort of choices on me. She considers herself Roman Catholic, not practicing in any way though, but told me when I was young and asked about such things, that when I was older I would choose for myself. When I hear people saying that it is a poor environment for children to grow up in, and that it will be the end of our species, it infuriates me. My mother once told me, not sure how we got on the topic, with a completely straight face, pun, that she wouldn't ever wish for me to be gay, because it was so incredibly hard for her growing up, and still is. So when I see people say that gay parents means gay children, I just shake my head at the ignorance. Back to my second mother now. She was married to a man and had 3 children with him before she realized something wasn't quite right and came out as a lesbian. She had a son who was 1 year older than I, so we were around 9-10 or so when we met, and we've been brothers ever since. This was about the only awkward part of my childhood, because there was still a taboo about being from a gay family, so among my friends, my brother was my cousin, and among his friends, I was the adopted one. The reason for that was because he and his 2 sisters are black, and I am white, so people could see we weren't complete brothers. I can't speak for all of Canada, but once we were past the teenage stage of our lives we didn't have to hide it anymore. No one really cares about my gay mother, they're all much more fascinated by my lack of a father. We usually call our parents the moms. You wanna come with me to the mom's Saturday even though only one was my mother at birth. I've grown up with both at almost every milestone of my life, so as far as I'm concerned they're both my mothers. Fun fact, I consider my mom the dad in the relationship, because she is such a tomboy and has the same role as fathers I see on TV. My only frame of reference for what a father is, while my stepmother is much more feminine. I once dated a guy with lesbian mothers. Let me tell you, when my crappy Craigslist car had any sort of issue, butch mom would always come to the rescue. When I lived on Capitol Hill in Seattle, I learned that I really loved going to lesbian bars not for the hot lesbian action, but talking cars and sports with sensitive people. I wasn't adopted but I lived with my mom and her partner for 10 years until I was 18. We lived just like any other family. If anything it made me value women more. I'm male. I definitely went through a phase at around 16 where I was just starting to explore faith and had a hard time processing what I thought were biblical principles with respect to my mom being gay. It led to some rough patches for us at home. I eventually grew up and learned to think for myself and realized that what I felt so sure of as a teenager about my home situation was butt backwards. Although my mom and her partner split a few years ago, I still go and visit her and call her my stepmom and her daughter my stepsister. Family is family and as a child you don't see the difference. You're a good guy, visiting your stepmom after they split up. I know it's pretty much the same as a stepfather in this situation, but from my experience of my friends that had a stepfather who's currently not with their biological parent, they don't really visit them. So many great people grow up in fricked up households, and so many fricked up people grow up in great households. But I can guarantee you growing up in a loving household, no matter the gender makeup of the parent or parents involved, is what matters most. And since gay parents are almost always parents by choice, I mean, there's not really any accidental pregnancies, I'd argue that gay parents will, more often than not, actually be better than average parents. I'm not adopted but my mother realized she was gay 5 years into her marriage with my father, divorced him, and moved in with some chick who is now her ex. It was a little awkward for me growing up, especially considering my religious affiliations and how deep those roots go in me. I'm a fairly conservative minister now, but it's amazing. I don't say this often enough, but I absolutely love my mom and her partner. They are both great people. So open and loving to everyone, always helping me with girl problems. It's pretty dang awesome. As a kid I wasn't bullied as much as I had those douchy kids coming up to me saying your mom is only a lesbian because she hasn't met me. I got that a ton in high school. The biggest way it has influenced me is in my understanding of others. My mother was raised in a very strict King James only kind of Christian household, and I've had so many conversations with her in tears telling me that she doesn't want to have feelings for the same gender and that if she could change she would. This stuff rocks my world. Being a Christian minister, it forces me to challenge the religious norm and truly inspect an issue that is glazed over by the church. Thinking through my mother's life and the issues she has have made me a billion times more empathetic towards people, not just the gay community but humanity as a whole. My mother and her partner remind me on a daily basis that we're not just discussing laws and policies, we're discussing the everyday lives of living, breathing people. Where I stand on the matter, I think that it is irrelevant here. I love my mom more than anything in this world. I'll comfort her, pray with her, and help her in any way I can. Do we see eye to eye on much? Absolutely not. But my personal theology does not interfere with the amount of love that I have for my mother. Jesus didn't come to separate his people from the lost. He came so that heaven and earth could collide and all could know who he is. No adopted. My brother was 3 and I was in the womb when my dad came out. My earliest memories involve him and his partner, Adam. Name switch. The hardest thing was just the fact that I lived with my mom and didn't get to see him a lot. So I had 3 parents, I guess. But I'll just talk about Dad and Adam. The most relevant thing about these two is how they play off of each other to teach me things. My father is a really intelligent and well-spoken man. He always taught through the stories of his life. He taught me tolerance, even in a world that doesn't necessarily tolerate him. He is more serious than Adam. Adam is quite a goofball. He teaches me that life is lived in the moment. So they taught me about life. If anything, I would say that being the child of a same-gender couple has been enlightening. I see so many different perspectives of life than other people. Am I different than your average child? Perhaps, but that's just because I am not afraid to be myself. And that's something my fathers have taught me that I will never forget. In an AMA of someone who went through the foster system, the person mentioned that lesbian couples are great resources for foster children who have been abused by males. So there's that. Whoa, I had never considered that. Thank you for mentioning this because I suspect your post will stay with me for a very long time. I'm not adopted. One of my moms was artificially inseminated. Regardless, I've had an incredible upbringing. Based on all of the families I've seen, I'd say we communicate and know each other better than 95% of families. I doubt that has very much to do with their being lesbians, though, but rather just them being people there, and by virtue of that me being who I am. I can admit it's really nice to know that I was an incredibly wanted child. Similar to being adopted, my parents had to work very hard to be able to have me, and this was late 80s when they started trying, so it also wasn't super common or accepted. I grew up in Louisiana, so there were people who weren't fans of our setup, and I went to Catholic school for 15 years, so that was tough at moments. Try writing true on a religion test stating that gays should not be able to have children, but I wouldn't trade anything. I argue with my parents like normal children do. They argue with each other, and honestly 99.4% of the time I forget that my family is in any way unique or different. I've definitely enjoyed opening some minds in the past 21 years, though. Let me just start by saying that I was not raised by parents who happened to be gay. I did, however, grow up with 2 female parental figures. My father, after battling with depression for most of his life, committed suicide when I was 5 years old. I was the youngest of 4 children. At that time, my mother's sister was living with us on a temporary basis with the intention of finding her own place in the new area that we had all just moved to. Instead of doing this, she stayed with my mother and her kids for 15 years, excluding a period of a few years when I was in high school. My aunt's name was Jackie, and she stepped into the role of a parent to help us all out. She had a biological son who was already an adult, so she had a lot of practice. She took us hiking, built our Pinewood RV cars, helped with school projects, helped to dress and feed us, taught some of us to drive, and provided some much needed emotional support at a pivotal time in my family, when my mother, who was herself a completely amazing parent and individual, became overwhelmed with everything. Jackie was there literally 100% of the time. For all intents and purposes, she was a second parent to us. My siblings and I never had to withstand any bigotry because my parents were siblings, so my experience is likely to be very different from most other kids of same gender parents. But the nature of our childhood has helped me to appreciate how pointless gender roles in parenting. Jackie wasn't a dad, but she also wasn't a mom. She was just an adult who cared deeply for a group of kids and for my mother. As far how our experience can be measured as different from the typical one, none of us kids really had much of any interest in sports until we were adults. I can't speak for my brothers, but I was pretty dang clueless on a lot of dating stuff growing up, and still am. My sister readily admits that she is bad at flirting with the opposite gender. My brothers both have kids now, and seem to be great dads, regardless of the fact that for most of their childhoods, they didn't have a point of reference. By the way, we all turned out straight. I know a lot of these traits don't automatically arise from the lack of a male parental figure, but I am convinced that they were influenced by it. Sorry if my little anecdote doesn't completely fit the criteria, but I feel like it has more similarities than differences. Maybe I just wanted someone to know how great Jackie was to our family. She passed away in July and it was weird not having her around for Christmas or her birthday, which was the 24th. All those who she left behind know that she was one of the most selfless people around, including her own biological son and grandchildren, who she spent her last months with. She was a great lady. Your aunt sounds like she was a fantastic human being, and you were blessed to have her in your life. My condolences on your loss. I just want to point out that as the child of a single parent, I also find a lot of the arguments they make regarding this personally offensive since most of it focuses on the lack of both gender roles. They make the assumption that each gender can only do certain things. My mother taught me to cook and embroider, as well as how to maintain a car and how to patch a hole in the drywall. I never really noticed any difference between myself and my friends who had both parents. In fact, I was, and still am, closer to my mother than most of them were to either parent. The only thing a single parent is preferable to is any parental situation that is harmful to the upbringing of the child or creates an unhealthy home life. My point is only that being raised by a single parent does not automatically make you less able to function in society or give you an automatic disadvantage. As a guy whose dad died when they were 4, I find I am not as good at interacting with fathers of friends as I am with their mothers. Dads have always been a mystery to me. I was more afraid of them if anything. All my friends' moms though seem to love me. Even now that I am 22 I have issues holding a conversation with older men. I'm not, but my first girlfriend had 2 mums. She wasn't adopted. Her mother was bi and her dad ran off when her mom was still pregnant, and then her mom met her wife and they got married when she was like a year old. Her moms were awesome. She was smart, happy, and extremely well-rounded. I know they still argued and whatever, but from everything I saw they were totally normal parents who loved the crap out of their daughter. Oh, and yeah, she got some crap at school for it, but no more than she got for being a lesbian. I think it's pretty rare that gay parents make gay babies, so she got teased a bit by our gay friends for being a statistical anomaly. We lived in a pretty liberal area though, so other kids probably have it worse at school in the southern USA and stuff. Dated a guy with lesbian moms. Not too much different than any other parents honestly. They bicker like a straight couple. One of them is more nurturing and motherly and the other is more open and fatherly, I suppose. They all loved each other very much and my ex turned out fairly well. A little awkward, but whatever. Who isn't awkward? My grandmother is a lesbian and she's been with her current partner for 25 years, but has had other female and 2 male partners. It's nowhere close to a perfect relationship, and they are actually separating. My mom described her childhood as awful, not because of 2 women being in a single household, the horror, but because of the bullying she went through for having a lesbian as a mother. Keep in mind, this was in the 60s, so there were no nice football players who threatened to beat up homophobes or anything like that. If you were gay or lived with someone who was gay, you were an outcast. But who wasn't in those days, right? Anyways, if you ask my mom for her stance on gay marriage, she would tell you she's against it. I 100% believe it's because of her difficult upbringing. Because her mother is a semi-manipulative and rude lesbian with poor parenting skills. She thinks no gay couple should adopt or become married. So goddamned ignorant if you ask me. I bring up the argument that there are straight couples who are crappy parents too, and it has nothing to do with their physical orientation. It's all about their personality. Her response? They shouldn't be able to have kids get married either. Okay, mom. Maybe there should just be a law that forbids two people from adopting getting married due to their fricked up personalities rather than physical orientation. So if you want me to be completely honest, crappy gay parents and crappy straight parents exist, and neither of them should be put on a pedestal. I realize that's not the answer you were looking for, but I don't really care. This is a good story. There are going to be bad parents regardless. I don't understand why people get upset about it. I mean, isn't having two moms better than a single mom? Not saying single moms are bad, just that it can be hard. Plus imagine two gay guys raising a little girl. She'd be so dang fashionable. Sweet Jesus. Come on guys, I know all gay guys aren't fashion gurus. It was a joke. Calm yourselves. I remember watching one of those talk shows. Maybe it was the Tyra Banks show or something like that. And this girl was adopted by two gay guys. When she went through puberty, her gay parents threw her a period party. A period party. I was never loved like that. A co-worker of mine and her wife, they finally got married a few months ago, adopted two children who were already brother and sister, not wanting to tear them apart. Their kids call them Mama A and Mama B, with A and B being replaced by each parent's name, so they aren't confused by just saying mom. Watching the kids interact with others, you could never really tell that anything is different about them. They're polite and generally well behaved. I saw a man with his child in a gas station once. I had seen the man and the child a few times before, and at one point I had seen him with who I assume was his boyfriend. The child was really young, at the point where they don't really have much true sense of individuality, initially just basing their choices off of what they have been fed with. The little boy was wearing shorts so short that anyone could nearly see his butt cheeks, a shirt with the sleeves torn off, the collar cut so that the collarbones show, and the bottom of it ripped up to the point of being just below his chest, but showing his entire belly. The father of the child was rather disgusting looking, as rude as that sounds, very dirty, not well groomed, and had a personality that seemed filthy. I'm not sure how else to describe it. That itself is a pure example of people trying to force certain decisions on a child. No child sits there and thinks, hey, I want to wear booty shorts, shorter than any person I've ever seen, or you know what would look great on me? A torn up shirt that exposes my belly and makes me look like a sleazy 20-year-old woman now. I'd be all fine for that if the boy had made these choices way later in life. But the fact was that he couldn't have learned to read that much yet, let alone learn about his individual style. TLDR. I used two examples, one good and one bad, to show that just like straight couples make poor choices as parents, so do same-gender couples and even gay single parents. Note, I just thought I'd offer insight because I believe that nothing should be painted with this is completely pure paintbrush. People are people, bad parents are bad parents, regardless of their genders or physical orientations. Equality is a magnificent thing that should be offered to all people, but no one should assume that same-gender parents or traditional parents will automatically be good or bad parents based on that. We would like to believe that all adoptive parents are good parents thanks to thorough screening. Well, I'm not adopted, but my birth father is gay and came out shortly after I was born. We still had a great relationship growing up and I would spend my summers at his house and many weekends. Since I was very young at first, I didn't know he was gay and just thought I had a lot of uncles, which were what we would call his boyfriends. He eventually settled down with another man, and being that he was gay and couldn't have kids of his own, he treated us like his own. Growing up in this environment was very normal to me and helped me realize that all people are the same and deserve nothing but love and compassion. I was a jock in high school and most of my friends had a significant problem with it. I felt a deep sense of responsibility to stick up for any gay kids in my high school and let them know that we all weren't dongheads. So in this sense I feel it really helped me become a well-rounded, less ignorant human being. Other than that, everything is pretty much the same, being that we are all human and pretty much the same. The only other thing I would say is that the gay culture is very different from the straight culture, just as urban culture is different from suburban culture or white culture is different from black culture. They stereotypical gay culture is a little bit seedy, and my father fell in with the wrong crowd and became an HIV positive drug addict, although I'm not sure how much of this was the gay culture or how much of it was drug culture. I live in Miami, so it's easy to get those two confused. My little sister's boyfriend, they've a kiddo together. Father is gay. I never really think of it because he is my sister's boyfriend's dad, but the gentleman lives with his long-term partner. They've been together a number of years now. Boyfriend-in-law was born when his dad was 14 years old. He has a twin brother. Dad later went on and had another son, who is about 7 years younger. He's autistic. Somewhere in the midst of this, Dad gets custody of all 3 boys and raises them alone for a bit. Eventually his partner joins the family. The kids aren't formally adopted, but they are a lovely little family, for all their quirks. When I think of modern families taking on the world, they kinda fit the definition. They do well, support each other, and are good people. My sister's boyfriend bugs me from time to time, but in a generic way he's a good person and my sister loves him. So, that's that. Evidently there was never a conversation regarding their dad's physical orientation. He just had his partner move in and they share a bedroom. A good friend of mine was raised by 2 moms. His father and mother were married, but divorced when he was a baby. His mother had custody of him, and she met and fell in love with another woman when he was 2 or 3. They are still together. He said that his life was pretty much exactly like every other kid, except that when someone at school wanted to tease him, it wasn't for being too smart or bad at sports, but for having 2 moms. He also grew up in a pretty liberal area, so even that didn't happen that much. They're wonderful ladies, and they clearly love him very much. Not me, but a coworker. He's gay and has adopted kids. I can't say from the kids' perspective, but they seem well adjusted and polite. They lost power for an extended period of time, Sandy, and the 2 dads took turns taking the kids with them to work. The kids were kids, but still well behaved, so as a non-kid haver, I approve. I have 2 moms, although I'm the biological son of one of them. I think I probably had one of the best upbringings of anyone I know. My moms are some of the most sensible, good-hearted, selfless people in existence as far as I'm concerned, and provided an incredibly loving and supportive environment for me and my brother. When I was in my younger teens, I definitely went through a period of hating my parents for depriving me of a normal childhood. Honestly, they probably could have done a better job providing me with some kind of male role models or paternal figures. I've always been somewhat effeminate and much better at connecting with females than with males, and I have no doubt that that's because of my somewhat unbalanced upbringing. As I've gotten older though, I've kind of leveled out and become more masculine and better at interacting with guys. I would never in a million years trade a second of my childhood for anyone else's. Whoa, same. Always better at talking to girls than to dudes, but not really effeminate at all. Never really had any spite about the weird childhood, though. Glad you're past that. I always chose my own male role models. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.